undoubtedly, you have heard about the 25% tariff coming to the auto sector. What you may not understand is just how bad or good this 25% tariff will be for different auto manufacturers. Frankly, I have no idea, but you know what? I got a buddy who's a 12-year vet on Wall Street, and he knows. Taylor, how you doing, buddy?
This was shocking to me. It's not just the impact and the cost, but it's also what companies are actually American-made cars. That's what shocked me, because it's not the big three of Ford, GM, and Stellantis. So I'll kind of break it down. I'll give you what the cost increase looks like,
Okay.
who bears the cost increase that is going to be experienced, and then also on the back end, just what cars are going to see the most impactful numbers change. So to begin with, and this is directly out of Barron's for this weekend, all this information. So it's all from the highest level of financial publication. So
shout out the team at Barron's. Shout out the team at Barron's. Sorry.
Totally. So the first thing they see is the most impacted cars will have about a $10,000 price increase, which I was like, whoa, 10,000 is a bigger number than what I expected.
Yeah,
and they said it will be about 50-50 split. So it'll be 50% taken by the consumer, and then 50% of it will be taken by either the automaker or the dealer. So $5,000 price increase is what the average population can expect in some of these vehicles when they go to buy new.
Let me ask you a quick question. Wow. So again, we'll get into the specifics in a minute. So a lot of new cars are going to be $5,000 more expensive to the consumer. But I want to go back to the manufacturers themselves. Again, if we were to look at the gross margin of an auto manufacturer, aren't they like low double digits?
They're not good.
They're not good, right? They're not
good. So what they said is what they're going to do is they're going to nurse through the inventory that they have right now. And you shouldn't see a meaningful increase in current inventory. But everything that is newly fabricated coming in, they're expecting a 50-50 split. And what they said is that will take them to almost direct break evens. And so they're not going to be making money on these cars. And that's why you see when, days that auto tariffs come up in the news, what happens to Ford, GM, Stellantis, what happens to all their shares? They get absolutely nuked. The interesting, and this will tease our next point. The interesting thing is I was always like, well, why are these big American-made brands getting hit as bad, if not worse, than Toyotas, Hondas, et cetera? So that's yet to come.
Yeah, it's funny. I've done a bunch of research on it's shocking to me how impacted General Motors is going to be. GM is going to get hammered in this, right?
Totally. And Ford, via what I'll tell you here in a minute, might be even worse.
Oh, really? Okay. All right.
The Ford backs up the back of the train in the caboose. So that's that. You'll also see trucks, SUVs getting a bigger price increase. They didn't go into this. I would imagine that's just because there's more material.
Yeah, it's a higher price point. I think trucks.
Higher price point, bigger vehicle, more raw material. Yeah. So then what they did was they broke down, okay, now let's look at what is truly American made. And so again, like the big three is what I think of when I think of American made: Ford, GM, Stellantis. And so GM is Chevy, et cetera. Stellantis is Jeep, Dodge, Chrysler, et cetera.
Yep.
And then they break down, they take you to a cars.com analysis that they did in 2020 that they just redid at the end of 2024. And what they do is they break down what is the most American-made cars. And they do it on a set of 5 criteria. But the baseline is just where are the parts coming from, where they assembled, essentially, who's making these cars, where the parts getting sourced from, et cetera. And so number one, probably won't shock you, is, and let me give you one more point of context. It's not the brand, it's each individual model that's broken out as to where they're made, et cetera. So number one is the Tesla Model Y. That has the largest components of it produced in the United States. Number two is a Honda. Number three is a Volkswagen. And if you look at the top 10, it is Toyota, Honda, Acura, Lexus. There is one Jeep in the top 10. There is a Dodge Ram in the top 20. And then you have to go all the way to number 23 before you get the first GM vehicle, which is a Chevy. And you have to go all the way to number 31 to get a Ford.
That's not good.
That's not good. The brand on the American made, everyone wants to support America and buy American made. Like to the average consumer, if they're like, hey, I'm going out and buy an American car because I want to support the US, they're going Ford, they're going Chevy, something like a Cadillac. No, none of that. Go out and buy a Volkswagen, which is a German company. Go out and buy a Honda, which is a Japanese company if you want to support America.
Go buy a Model Y Tesla.
Or a Model Y, right, or Tesla. And Tesla has multiple vehicles in the top end. But Tesla, like I said, Tesla should follow logic. That's an American company, right? So, but no, Tesla was definitely the best brand to support. And I know you love to hear that, by the way.
Yeah. I think I told you I bought some Teslas. Didn't I tell you that last week?
That was my point.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And but to be frank on that should see the lowest price increase as a function of these tariffs.
Yeah, it's just wild for me to think about, because if you actually go back now and you look at NAFTA and how that really gutted the manufacturing of the auto sectors, it really moved stuff to Canada and Mexico. GM and Ford clearly took advantage of that, where Honda, Toyota, Volkswagen, they made, because these factories don't just sprout out of nowhere, right? They take years to build.
Correct.
Right. They were building these manufacturing facilities, decades ago, and now they're going to benefit from it.
Right. And this is Howard was speaking about this on that podcast that you're talking about. He talked about NAFTA being amazing for the company of GM, the company of Ford, not the American people,
not the country of the U.S.
Correct.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting. So let's play this out a little bit. Let's first and foremost assume that these tariffs stick, right? Because again, that's a wild card. But we're just going to assume it sticks.
Well, let me interject one thing there.
Sure.
Because Eamon Javers from CNBC asked President Trump in the Oval Office, "Are these tariffs going to stick?" He said 100% through his term they will stick. So again, that's not to say that is definitive. Whatever. A threat doesn't work unless you make it sound like it's a real thing that's going to play out. But nonetheless, at least if you take it at face value, that's where that goes.
All right. So we're going to take him at his word. They're going to stick for the next 4 years. Okay, great. What happens short term? Short term being 2025. What happens long term being by the end of Trump's presidency? Do you have kind of a series of dominoes that you see happening short and long term?
Well, one of the things that people have said, because I posted a video on this, and one of them said, they said, buy used, buy used, buy used. I'm like, guys, economics 101 says that.
I actually said that too.
If you
get ready for inflation 2.0.
Yeah. The next iteration is like, listen, if new cars prices go up and people can't afford them, it's going to create more competition for used cars, and they're going to follow through. So,
9.1 in CPI coming back.
Yeah. Oh, jeepers, no. Holy
no,
smokes.
I'm kidding. That was a joke.
I'm glad that I don't have this number off the top of my head. Maybe you do. Is just what percentage of our economy is based off of autos. I know housing.
Housing is low double digits. Autos is like 5 or 6%, depending on supplies and all of that. But yeah, it's not large. But I actually told people, get ready for used car prices to go back up.
Yeah, the natural inclination is buy used now. Okay, well, if that's the natural inclination by everybody, that drives prices. And we saw that during COVID, used prices went absolutely bananas because supply chains were disrupted and new cars couldn't be produced quickly enough. If it was only that easy.
So the other thing that I think happens, again, inside these large manufacturers, they have, supply chain black belts and all of this. So again, what's happening short term is they're looking at their existing manufacturing, seeing what they could squeeze out. They're probably looking at, hey, could we take a high margin vehicle from maybe being made in Mexico and coming over here? There's a lot of short term supply chain optimization going on, no doubt. There's probably some manufacturing plants that have spare capacity. Maybe they run 24/7 and add a third shift, for example. So those things will happen incrementally. Will be noise, rounding errors, not meaningful, but clearly that's all happening right now. Mm-hmm. The big question I have for you is, Does meaningful manufacturing come back to the United States in the next 4 years?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't have any natural historical precedent to point at and say yes. So I'm going to say no, because I don't have any evidence of a time frame in the past where we can say, yes, this had the desired impact of repatriating jobs to the United States. That is the intention. Don't get it twisted. That is the intention.
That is the goal of the administration. It's a great goal. The middle class has been hollowed out. Manufacturing jobs, post NAFTA and global trade. It's been painful to watch.
It has. I just wish that if I had my druthers, which no one cares about my thoughts, but and Elon Musk said this himself, that I wish the tariffs were just implemented in more methodical nature, meaning slowly, because people can reshore slowly. They can't reshore quickly. And that's why you're going to see massive movement higher in prices very quickly as a result of this.
That's the big thing I took from the Lutnick interview. It's like, okay, I get your goal. I get the $1 trillion in savings. I get the $1 trillion in new revenue. All good stuff. You got to bend the curve. You got to balance the budget. All good stuff I can get behind. But you're telling me it's going to take 2, 3, 4 years to spin up a brand new manufacturing plant? Dude, your administration is over.
Right.
You hoping JD Vance, gets the next 8 years and you can keep the party going? Because again, companies don't make, to your earlier point, right? China thinks in 100 years, centuries, and we think in 2-year chunks. This is going to get chaotic.
It is. It already is, right? Let's call a spade a spade. You and I, who, again, I'm not saying I'm the brightest person in the world. I'll just use you. You are incredibly well read on the economy. And what is going to be impacted by tariffs on Wednesday?
No idea.
Yeah, exactly. You don't
but know. I'll go one step further. I actually said this morning on the Daily Financial News. I'm like, does anybody really think we're going to get any great clarity on Wednesday? Like magically the fog is going to lift? Does anybody really think the picture is any clearer Wednesday at noon?
No.
I'm not in that camp.
No. And that's what did we say on the first episode of this today? Was like, listen, we need more clarity, like around everything when it comes to this. We need more clarity as to the end goal. We need more clarity as to what we're attacking to get us to that end goal. We need more clarity as to, okay, if you're a CEO right now, what the F do you do? Because you don't even know what your supply chain looks like. You know what your supply chain looks like. You just don't know whether tariffs are going to be enacted.
Consumers are frozen. Businesses are frozen. I don't know how. Again, I'll take the under. I'm going to take a negative Q1. There, I said it. I'll even take a negative Q2.
Boom.
We're going classic recession Q1, Q2. Trump wants a recession. I kid.
Now let me ask you something. Because I am like pounding the table on this, and maybe I'm just wrong. But do you think that if it was clear as the details of, for example, Howard Lutnick saying 50% tariffs is what's being done by India right now against our products, do you think that would help, or does that confuse? That is what I want. I want a white paper written where we can see everything that is being done to us, all the unfair policy. So you don't think that would help?
So I think that helps the 1%. I think that helps you and I kind of see the Howard Lutnick interview showed me the chessboard, right? My view of the chessboard was this big before that interview. It's now this big. I have a better appreciation. 99% of the folks out there won't care, won't listen to, just deal with the headlines. They've got to change the messaging. It's not about India's 50% tariff. It is, guys, I have to give you some medicine. It's going to suck for a little bit. The U.S. economy has cancer, and it's a fatal stage 3 kind of cancer. I have no choice but to give you guys a high level of chemotherapy, and you're going to feel like garbage for 6 months. But let me tell you, if we don't do this, you're dead. The economy blows up. I don't know when, but 10 years from now. That's the trajectory. That's what
if you spin that story, you better be very good at telling what the downside is. if
Yeah,
we
you
don't
gotta-
do this. That
gotta
has to be
bring-
highlighted more.
You got to bring the boogeyman out and
Yep.
have them stare at people's eyes.
Yep.
And then you
Yep.
got to say, but we get through this. I'm going to give you no tax on tips. I'm going to give you no taxes on anybody who makes income less than 150 grand. I'm not going to tax, retirement accounts or whatever it is for folks over 65. You got to give them the carrot, because one thing I know about the U.S. consumer is if we clearly understand the pain and the reward, we're in. We're in. Right now, all we hear is pain.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I'm just more involved in politics right now, maybe than I've ever been in my life, as a function of what I do on a day-to-day basis.
Sure.
I've always been in the investment world, but I've not always been in just the general commentary world, which I've now stumbled upon. And what I am lacking is, I don't want to hear we're being ripped off. I want to hear where it is and what's the actual impact of it. And again, back to that interview. He said, listen, what we did was we allowed folks to put tariffs on us after wars for reparations so they can pay back and get back to a sustainable economy. And it was because they needed a Band-Aid. But the Band-Aid stayed on for 50 years.
Yeah,
that is something I have not heard anywhere. And yet he brought up, and he said, listen, Trump has been speaking about this since the 80s. Yeah. And he said, he realizes this. He taught me this, is what he said. Now, again, I want a little more meat on that too, but that is so much more than what we're hearing. You can't just say we're getting ripped off, we're getting gutted.
No, you've got to do you have to do long form for this. You can't do 60-second TikTok clips. It won't stick, in my opinion.
Yep. Unfortunately, that's the world we're in these days.
No, I agree. No, totally agree.
All of our attention spans are 2 second long. And to your point, like, maybe I don't know what it is. Go on Joe Rogan. Like, how many people listen to that? I guess, go back on All In Podcasts. Apparently that's the most popular podcast in the world. Go on those and explain. And at least then maybe you can get a groundswell from potentially who you refer to as the 1%ers, get that buy-in from them and allow them to pass the message along.
You've got to go back and do what you did pre-election. You got to get on the top 10 most listened podcasts. You got to let them clip it up. You've got a little window. If you lose the public, the midterms are over.
Let's be clear. This is selling. You need to sell.
Oh, yeah.
Sell hard. That's what politics is. Sell hard, get conviction in something, figure out. And I think the conviction is there. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's a clouded message in Washington. I think it's the messaging of that to the masses is very clouded right now. I don't think they're doing a good job.
No, it's horrible. Well, folks, one of the things that I know for certain, I already know one of the topics for Taylor and I's conversation next Monday is going to be Liberation Day. Do we have any great clarity or not? I guarantee you that will be topic number 1 next week. Taylor, where can people find you?
Yeah, find us at Life Goal Investments. We're on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, all the platforms.
There you go. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate you.
Thank you.